Chapter 16. Jar heard the wood settling. It was a homey, comforting sound, a sound he had never noticed before. Noises like this, what J.R. called quiet noises, were things he had come to treasure with the kid and the cat around. Over the last 3 weeks, they had completely overtaken the upper floors. Toys were all over the ground, kid shows on TV, baths every day. There was no end to it. But he was its own man in his basement. He had converted it to a workroom and gym separated by a drywall. In his workroom, he kept a workbench, some tools and scanners scattered here and there, and some books and other equipment tossed on the shelves. His gym was covered in gymnast mats. A weight set sat in one corner, and in another hung a punching bag and a heavy bag. Right now, he sat hunched over his workbench and tinkered with a gadget he had gotten. It was a square metal box that had an ammeter built into it to detect the flow of electricity. A light bulb was screwed into the top. The entire thing was connected to a volt-ohm-meter, which JR was using to test it. The machine was designed to channel a person's bioelectricity from a disc attached to the arm, through the wire, and into the metal box, thus turning on the light bulb. However, JR had not been able to make the sensor strong enough to pick up the minute amount of bioelectricity the body generates. He heard tiny footsteps hopping down the stairs. "I said you weren't allowed down here, kid." Zena's face appeared in the doorway. "You said I couldn't come down here without you, and you're here now." She skipped over to him. "Where's your sister?" "She's sleeping. She sleeps a lot." She climbed up on his lap, settled in, and rested her cheek in her hands. "I'm bored, Mr. JR. I don't want to watch TV anymore." JR had to smile. This girl had some nerve, and he respected that. As she examined the items on the workbench, the light caught her fur and made it glisten. JR noticed, especially after Melody mentioned it in the store, that Zena's fur looked shinier than anyone else's he knew. "What are you doing, Mr. JR?" Zena asked, using both hands to pick up the electric meter. "Don't touch it!" JR snatched it from her and tried to stretch around her to keep working. "I'm doing a favor for a friend." "What favor?" "Trying to get this to work." JR tapped the gadget with his screwdriver. "What's it supposed to do?" "Use bioelectricity to turn on a light bulb. He can't get it to work, so he asked me to look into it." What's that?" "Electricity your body makes." "Oh." Zena examined the machine. "Why can't he work it?" "I don't know." JR chewed on the end of the screwdriver. Tinkering with electronics wasn't his forte, more of a skill born out of the need to modify and create tools for his job. The idea of this gadget, using the body's own electricity to power a machine, was intriguing. Imagine all the ways he could use this in his line of work. But why won't this stupid thing work? Zena looked up at him with a slight pout. "You're not supposed to say stupid." "Shut up." "You're not supposed to say shut up either," Zena muttered, but didn't say anything louder. Instead, she studied the gadget again. "Can I try and turn on the light?" "Why not?" JR strapped the disc on Zena's arm. No harm in letting her try it if it would keep her quiet a few minutes. After all, he was sure it wasn't dangerous. Pretty sure. He'd tried it 1,000,000 times and nothing had happened to him. Sure, she was smaller, but Zena squealed and jumped, and JR's heart leapt into his throat. "I did it," she said. JR looked at the light bulb. It was dark. "Watch." Zena looked at the bulb, balled her fist, and squeezed her eyes shut. Sweat started to bead on her forehead, and she trembled as she concentrated. The light bulb flickered on and went out when she relaxed. "It's hard." JR gazed at her. Here a 5-year-old accomplished in 2 seconds what he had spent 2 years trying to do. "How'd you do that?" Zena shrugged. JR took the sensor off of Zena's arm and strapped it to his. He stared at the light bulb, clenching his fist, and willed it to turn on, but it remained dark. He stood, making Zena fall off his lap, gripped the table, and glared at the thing so hard his knuckles went white and his tail stood on end. Still, the stupid thing refused to work. "You little—" "Maybe it doesn't like you." JR glared at her, his tail stiffening. "Don't you have something else to do?" "No," she hugged his leg. "I want to be with you." JR rolled his eyes. He turned back to his gadget and ignored her. Maybe she'd get bored and leave. She watched him for a moment, then held her hands behind her back and rocked back and forth. Then she spun around in circles and laughed as her skirt flew up. After doing this 13 times, JR counted, for each giggle made him lose his concentration and made him clench his teeth a little harder. She played imaginary hopscotch and hopped toward the door leading to the gym. Ooh, Xena peered inside. Mr. JR, what's in there? JR didn't move, but felt his eyebrows knit. My gym. A gym? Do you do exercises in there? Xena started jumping up and down and clapping her hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. JR clutched the table and forced his ears to stand back up. I don't do exercises in there. Then what do you do? I practice fighting, JR said through his teeth. Fighting? Xena's eyes grew wide. Fighting's bad. Not when you're trying to defend yourself. Xena cocked her head. Why do you have to? JR took a deep breath and let it out slowly, aware his nails were piercing his palms and his ears were laying flat against his skull. Because. Because why? JR bit his lip. Because. Because why? JR shut up, grabbed her by both arms, and shook her as hard as he could. Xena, shut up! He released her so hard she had to take 2 steps backwards to regain her balance. When she did, she gazed at him with wide eyes. Xena's mouth screwed up into a pout. You're so mean! She shoved him as hard as she could before turning her back on him and plopping cross-legged on the floor. JR snorted through his nose. She might have been mad, but at least she was quiet. Maybe now he'd be able to get back to work. With a sigh, he sat back in his chair. But in all his life, JR had never been able to stand being in the same room as an angry female, even as one as small as Xena. Her anger kept buzzing at him like an angry bee. He couldn't stand it anymore. Would you stop pouting? No, you're mean. Would someone mean get you all that candy upstairs? You yelled at me. I didn't even do anything. Because you're too loud. You're asking too many questions. I want some quiet. Xena peeked over her shoulder at him. You don't want me to ask questions? Just be quiet, okay? JR put a finger to his lips. Shh. A smile broke through Xena's pout. Okay. Thank you. JR turned back to his project. Xena sat where he left her, playing with her toes, and not making a sound. Perhaps now he could finally get some work done. He picked up his gadget and started to open the casing. Oops! Xena clapped her hands over her mouth. Sorry. JR turned his attention back to the casing, but felt the unasked question buzzing through the air, crashing to his mind over and over, like a fly trapped in a screened-in porch. What, kid? But you don't want me to ask? JR gripped the screwdriver. Just ask. Can I go in your gym? JR flung the door open. Don't touch the weights. He watched her run in and then went back to his gadget. He moved the casing and examined the multicolored wires crisscrossing each other. Perhaps one of them needed to be replaced with something more conductive. Maybe an alloy. Take that, you meanie. JR pricked his ears and looked up. What had come over him? Go away, you! Xena's voice floated out of his gym and circled the air around his head. He rolled his eyes and tried to turn his attention back to his project, but Xena's voice flew through the air and burrowed into his thoughts until she was all he could hear. He laid his head on the table and covered his ears with both hands. Still, Xena's voice came through. JR threw his hands into the air. She doesn't shut up. Take that, Xena shouted. You leave Mr. JR alone, you bad man. JR lifted his head. He rose and peeked into the gym. Xena lunged at the heavy bag with all her might, but the kickback knocked her onto her tail. Mr. JR is my friend. Go away. She jumped up and gave it a punch that didn't even make it move. No, you're doing it wrong, JR set her aside. Here, let me teach you. This is how to punch. I know how to punch. Xena punched him in the leg. That's a sissy punch, kid. You want to punch like this. JR took a stance and gave the heavy bag a punch that sent it swinging almost to the ceiling. He had to catch it to keep it from smacking him in the face. Wow, Xena said, her eyes flashing gold in the light. You're strong. You can do it too with proper training. Stand like this with your legs apart. JR positioned her feet. Now put your hands in the air like this and bring it back. Good. Now do it faster. Good, faster, good. Now do 10 of those. Can you count to 10? Xena counted while punching the air. When she was finished at 10, he told her to turn around and punch 10 times with her left hand. When she had finished, he told her to punch with the right side again. My arms are hurting, Xena let her arms flop to the side. Means it's working, JR said. Xena continued 2 more sets before turning to him with her lip thrust out. Can I stop now? Sure. It hurts. Xena rubbed her arms. Do you do that all the time? Every day when I wake up. Xena studied him. Can I do it again with you tomorrow? I thought you didn't like it. It hurts, but I get to play with you. I like to play with you. So can I please? Xena clasped her hands and looked up at him with wide eyes. Please? JR allowed himself a chuckle. I'll get you tomorrow then. Yay! Xena grinned so wide she squinted and hopped up and down. Then she skipped out of the gym and up the stairs. The kid's not so bad, JR said as he watched her leave. And I found a way to relieve some of that extra energy she has. With one last punch to the heavy bag, he walked to his workroom and went back to work.